Well, it's awesome to be speaking to you both because I had a great time watching this movie. And to begin with, I'm curious for both of you. Watching this, it felt in some ways kind of like a story about losers. But what attracts you both? You know, Shane, you as a filmmaker, and John, you as an actor. What attracts you to characters like the ones in this movie?
Shane.
John. Uh, yeah, I'm just interested in stories about people who are in over their heads, just sort of struggling to keep up with things. I think I just feel that way from day to day. That's my life to some degree. Like, I don't know. There's something about a lovable loser doing his best and failing that interests me.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. A lot of the things I've done have been outcast sort of stories, and I think I respond to that. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like I wasn't the most popular kid growing up. The girls weren't knocking down my door in high school, but so I think that feeling is something that is ever present in me, and the story of the outcast, or the story of not the like kings and queens and alphas of society, is something that I find much more interesting than the stories of the beautiful people who have everything. I find a lot of those stories kind of hard to watch because I'm like, well, what's wrong with your life? You have everything. You're beautiful and you have money, and so I find it just, I find these kinds of characters resonate more with me personally.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, and I fell in love with the characters in this movie. And Shane, I really liked how it is a mashup of genres. There's a little bit of Western, there's some comedy, some action. So for you as the writer as well as the director, how challenging was it to bring all those elements in and to get them to work together as well as they do in this one?
Well, in terms of writing, it's not too hard. It's just, I like those kinds of movies. I like old detective stories. I'm drawn to those characters. So it's just kind of pulling from the things that are interesting to me. Pulling it off is a little harder, of course, especially on a little film with a little budget. I love West Texas, love the aesthetic of West Texas. For financial reasons, we shot just across the border, New Mexico, to sort of try to bring that over there is a little bit of a challenge on our budget, but they did a great job, and the actors brought it to life.
Absolutely. And John, this is a character in Ray. He's very much in over his head in this situation. But then there's that awesome scene in the gun store. Fantastic chance for you, I think, as an actor to showcase what this guy's going through. But how difficult is it for you to get into the mind space of someone like Ray in that moment when he's really been pushed to the edge by everything that's happening in his life?
Uh, to go there, I mean, I've been open about this in the past. Like, I've struggled with depression and anxiety, and no shame about it. I take medication for it. So that dark place is a place that I know and I'm familiar with. So there's something always, I think, cathartic for me as an actor when I play scenes like that. Um, one thing I have to give Shane a lot of credit for is I did sort of fight against the shotgun to the head thing, and I was like, I don't know about this. This is pretty intense. And then as we were doing that scene, like we were doing it, and the like, I don't know, sometimes you're on set and you're doing it, and the like air changes, the vibe changes, you just like whatever the vibe. And it changed into a way that Shane probably wanted it to change, because I was like, I want to do, you're right, we should do this. And we did it. And I just saw it in a theater with an audience recently, about a week ago. And I had seen it before, and I was like, okay, that bit's cool. It actually works, and it's very powerful. And we saw it with an audience, and they really reacted to it. So that's when that good collaboration comes around, and having a director who's not forcing you, because then maybe you'll shut down, but allowing you to sort of come to it. And I'm glad it ended up happening, and is in the film.
Yeah.
I was so glad that I didn't talk you into it at all. You definitely didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to force you to, I just didn't know how.
And then we got to the point, and I was like, I don't know, maybe this, because
Yeah.
it started to make sense. Like again, like this is something that often happens. We were talking about this in another interview. With films, you read a page and you have an idea of like the gun store and what it is and what the vibe is, and I think when we initially came to this store, which is not what I would like, this is this weird, it's like half knickknack shop, half antique shop, little bit gun shop, little bit like it's just this weird place. And then in that world, for some reason, it started to make sense. Uh, like I was like initially picturing like a Dick's Sporting Goods, like or like a proper gun shop. And in that world, I was like, I don't know, like everyone's around, but anyway, it all worked out and it made sense. So yeah.
Yeah, it came together fantastic. And then, of course, in contrast, there's some really great moments of dark humor throughout the film. And there's some really absurd moments as well, like that scene with the toilet. So, for both of you, a day like that on set, is that a fun day on set, or is there a real challenge in finding that humor and making it work?
Um, so we as a small little indie movie, we didn't have a ton of time. Didn't have chance to do much rehearsal or do a lot of takes, and so pulling something like that off. I think in the first schedule we had a day to do that scene, and the second schedule we had a half a day to do that scene, and I think at the end we had about an hour to do that scene, which is a lot. And so it was definitely stressful. But it's a testament to the actors that it comes off as well as it does, because it was very tight and it was very quick shoot. But once the camera was rolling, they were great and dramatic and hysterical, and Bob and Steve and John, and they're just all so wonderful in that scene. So it feels it's one that always gets a good a good reaction from audiences. And I think it's like a very nice moment where you kind of like where audiences kind of settle in and really understand what the humor is. And I think it works really well. And it's a testament to those guys for being able to pull it off in such tough conditions. Because I think, whatever stresses were on set, you do not see on screen. You just get these great performances and these great characters.
Yeah, and for you as well, John, working with the humor of the character, did you enjoy that contrast to the, like we said, some of the darker moments Ray goes through?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was the fun of the story from the very initial read, was that it is, it's a tragedy, but it's funny. Those are the kinds of movies that, I really love, that made me start to really love cinema. People have compared this to, Blood Simple or Fargo, things like that. And there's something really engaging, entertaining, but profound in these stories that are tragic but also able to hold you with the humor of it. And the bathroom scene, even on the initial read, was one of those scenes you're like, this is just insane and insanely funny. Like Shane was saying, obviously, like if it was a studio movie, you'd have a day, you would have had a stage, you could have pulled walls, you could shoot it from every different angle, you'd have it. But we're shooting in an actual little bathroom next to that office that we shot in. And that's the beauty of indie filmmaking, is you're scrappy and you have to make it work with what you got.
I
Yeah.
love going back to the gun scene too, just talking about that tone. I really love that scene. I love John's performance in that scene. As we were editing that scene and I was talking to the composers, we used this music that really is underscoring the emotions of his character there. And there was a little bit of pushback. I think there was concern that like, this is dark, this is heavy. I don't know if this is a comedy anymore. But to me, that was like the essence of what the movie was. Like that, if I could put the movie in a nutshell, like that scene is what the movie was. Just the absurdity, the melancholy, and the humor that's coming out of it. And John's performance there is so great because he's so pathetic and he's so sympathetic, and you just like love him so much. But yet, it's just his dialogue there is so absurd, and that
Well,
that
yeah.
balance that he does in that scene is just amazing. I love his performance there.
And that's like how the line of that dark comedy is, that scene without the line, I think I need something shorter, is just tragedy. But as soon as he tries to put a shotgun to his head like a handgun, and then he looks at the guy and says, "I think I need something shorter," is takes it back into the comic realm, and that's a testament to Shane and his storytelling.
Yeah, it all came together brilliant in that respect. And then, of course, Shane, you've got a great almost antagonist in the film with Dylan Baker's character. So when it came to casting him, I thought you did a great job of going between that unassuming, almost dad-like character to this very sinister threat. What was it like for you to work with him, and what made him right for this project in your eyes?
Well, I would love to take all the credit for that, but the truth is the credit goes to John because we were, for schedule reasons, we were having a difficult time casting that role. And obviously he starts the film, he's there with John at the end. Like he's a hugely important character to the film. And getting that was so important. And we were really struggling trying to figure out who we were going to cast. And John knew and had worked with Dylan and suggested him. And as soon as he did, it just was like, I would say it was almost depressing when I heard that suggestion, because I knew if we didn't get him, that nobody else was going to be able to pull it off. But thankfully he did, and he was, absolutely great to work with. And as you could see, turned in a really memorable, wonderful performance.
I think in that once we started discussing Dylan, and I always like the idea of someone like Dylan or Dylan. Yeah, obviously it is Dylan, but like someone like that kind of actor, because there's a parallel to Ray. Dylan is very, he's slight and he's on the surface unassuming. But then we started talking about his performance in Todd Solondz's Happiness, which that scene where he talks to his kid about being a pedophile basically is so dark but comic at the same time. So I remember talking to Shane and our other producers about that, and I think everyone right away was like, "Yeah, yeah, that, yeah, yeah, yeah." And as you see, he is perfect. He's perfect as that guy.
And I think it's not just finding somebody great for that role, it's finding someone that pairs well with John, because I think those two characters are really connected. And he's sort of the what John's character wishes he could be, and they have this kind of similar track throughout the film where they are sort of running parallel but never quite intersecting until the end. And so, finding someone who can not only really do that well, but also really complimented John in just the right way was really important. And they're, as you can see, they're really great. They really pull it off together.
I think we all understood if it was someone who was just like, dark or like powerful, like those kinds of actors, like who lend themselves to being a stereotypical hitman, it wouldn't have worked because then it's not tying Ray and him together anymore. It becomes just, a total different thing.
Absolutely. Well, I love seeing Dylan in this film as well as the whole cast, and Steve Zahn as well. I've got to mention because obviously for you, John, you have that great, almost like a buddy cop dynamic. It's like quite ridiculous at times, but it's also really endearing, the friendship. So, what about with you and Steve? Did you like sinking your teeth into between the two of you and getting into that relationship between Ray and him?
I mean, I've been a fan of Steve since I was a teenager. When I first saw him, in movies that he was doing that thing you do, Saving Silverman, Never Been Kissed, right? Or what was the one he was? Anyway, not that, something else. And anyway, oh yeah, that's right. He was in You've Got Mail, but he was a lot. Anyway, I grew up watching some movies and finding him very funny, and then watching him grow as an actor. And obviously, we all saw him do White Lotus, and that tremendous performance in that. Um, so I was really excited to get to work with him, and knowing that he was going to just destroy that role. And he's just so brilliant at that comedy Shane is talking about, where it's like right in between, where it's playing the situation but being insanely funny. So luckily for me, it's sort of an Abbott and Costello situation where I'm the straight man in the buddy comedy, so I get the fun of getting to watch him just be brilliant, and just being there to support it in a lot of ways. But yeah, I loved it. It was such a pleasure.
Brilliant. And just one final question for you, John. You know, I've loved a lot of your work, Orange is the New Black, Umbrella Academy, Many Saints of Newark. But obviously, this movie is all about mistaken identity at its core. So, for you as an actor, have you ever been through that case of mistaken identity at all? Do you have any
Oh
recollections
yeah,
of that?
constantly,
Yeah.
constantly. Yeah, there's several. There's a lot of actors that people are like, oh yeah, what's his name? Michael Aragano. People are like, you were in the Nick. He's some actor game. He goes, we worked together on the Nick, and I was like, I was never in the Nick. And other actors, David what's his name? Desmalchin. People, he's a lot taller than me, but people will confuse me for him. It happens. It happens all the time.
Yeah, well, after this movie, I know everyone's going to be talking about you and this great cast. So, John, Shane, congrats on the movie. I thought it was awesome and fantastic to speak to you both today as a fan of both your work. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Have a good one. Cheers, guys.
You too. Thanks.